So everyone seemed to enjoy my video on the first Absolute Edition from DC I ever bought. Here's my second.
It's morphin' time!
Hello, this is Soundout here, and today I'm talking about Batman White Knight by Sean Murphy in its new Absolute Edition, but I also just haven't had a chance to talk about this story on the channel and thought, what better time than in the Mega Ultra Deluxe Premium Super Special Awesome format? I mean, it's like the best way to do it, right? So I decided, let's do it. Also because everybody responded pretty well to my video on the Crisis on Infinite Earths Absolute Edition, which was my first DC Absolute. Go check that out. I did comparisons to like the size of an Absolute Edition compared to other things. Don't feel compelled to do that with this one. I kind of want to make this a little shorter of a video, so go check the Crisis video out for details like that. But yeah, we're going to dive into Batman White Knight. I'm going to try to avoid spoilers, but still talk about what I like about the story and why it was significant enough to me to get it in Absolute Edition as opposed to just sticking with the hardcover I have or Deluxe Edition, something like that. Like, why did I want to go all the way to Absolute with this? We're going to talk about that today. So if you enjoy that, hit the like button, hit subscribe and the notification bell. Be sure to hit the hype button if it's available to you, and let's get into it. First things first, just want to point out the kind of like slight differences between the two Absolutes I have so far, which you can see. This is ridiculously tall, and I don't want these to careen off the edge. But I do like that every Absolute Edition is built to match the design philosophy of the comic it's based on. I also find it interesting that we have like the Batman White Knight logo treatment, like this is the front, right? But on the Crisis one, this seems to be the front because it's got the Crisis logo, so like the book is on this side, whereas it's on this side. But then I'm starting to realize that because this is the cover on the books, that's actually supposed to be the front. But yeah, this is also interesting because Crisis is a 2-book set because there's the main Crisis series plus the making of. Batman White Knight is a 2-book set because you have the color and the black and white editions, which is kind of wild. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of do a little side-by-side there. As I might have mentioned in the Crisis video, this is not my last Absolute this year. There are 3 more coming out this year. And I might do videos on all of them because they're all special. And I figure if it's special enough to buy in an Absolute, it's special enough for me to talk about it in a video. So we can see the cover here. This is existing artwork, but it still looks really, really nice. You can see it's dated 2017. So it's got like the major players of the story: Batman, Nightwing, Batgirl, the Batmobile, Joker, and Harley Quinn. This is an alternate universe story. This is an Elseworlds story released under DC's mature label, Black Label. And it is written and drawn by Sean Murphy, which I think is kind of really cool. I actually want to talk about kind of how the story itself is not like 100% the best written, but I still really love it. But yeah, so we got 2 books. We got Batman White Knight Absolute Edition, which you can see they blacked out the pages on the edge. This reminds me of the Vader's Castle Library Edition. Let me pull that up real quick. Yeah, this is by Dark Horse for the Star Wars line. And yeah, they had like the same thing where they blacked out the edges so that it didn't matter what the paper color actually was. It kind of gives it a cool look. And I think this looks cool on the regular edition, but the black and white edition, I think, gets an extra benefit from the blacked out page edges. But yeah, so this is this alternate universe story, like I said, but you get it in 2 editions because Sean Murphy was the writer and artist. So I wanted to kind of talk about that sort of experience because I believe this was the first comic he wrote, or one of the earliest he wrote, instead of just doing the art. But I do like that the cover's the same on the front and the back. You just get like the black and white and the color. But yeah, I want to talk about this book, and let's dive into it a little bit deeper. All right, so with Crisis, the book had kind of your standard hardback casing. With White Knight, they added this faux leather binding around the end of the book, which I think has given it a nice feel to it. It's just kind of like a unique sort of feature. I don't know if other Absolutes do this, but I kind of like it. It's just a little bit here, but it's like a faux leather binding for the spine. I think it's really awesome. But yeah, let's take a look at this book itself. The retail price on this set was $100, which, you know, it's kind of standard Absolute pricing at this point. But what is this story about? Well, okay, so Batman White Knight is a story about if the Joker went sane. You know, the Joker, so it's kind of it's an interesting setting because this is a Gotham where the Batman and Joker have been fighting for years. It actually starts on this very dramatic scene where Batman is locked up in Arkham, and it kind of goes, all right, well, what happened 1 year ago? And so it starts with, kind of a thing that alternate universe stories tend to do, which is kind of like, oh, here's the final confrontation between Batman and the Joker, and then where do we go from here? But instead of the Joker or Batman dying, which I think would have been kind of repetitive to what we've seen otherwise, Batman force feeds the Joker pills, and the pills make the Joker into a normal person with ideas that is a lot different than you would expect out of the Joker. And so what you kind of get as a story here is you get a Joker who's obsessed with Batman, who then becomes completely sane and, becomes a different person. Jack Napier, he talks about the Joker like it's a different person than who he was. And he talks about how he wants to save Gotham City and right the wrongs of the Batman. And I think that is such an interesting idea, and I think this series really explores it quite well. It does sort of slip into some old tropes. It does sort of slip into some like, oh, we're doing this again type thing, if you've read a lot of Batman stories. And to Sean Murphy's own admission, it pulls a lot from Batman the Animated Series and its setup and character dynamics as well. But I think it's really, really strong. But what I think is really great about it is that the book sold incredibly well, and we got sequels. So I don't think Batman White Knight is the strongest on its own. But if you include White Knight and you include the sequel series like Curse of the White Knight and Beyond the White Knight and the spin-offs, you get this really interesting universe because it goes into this really deep storytelling that covers these characters in this different setting, which I think is fantastic. Let's see. In the color version of the book, it does have bonus features like a variant cover gallery, which is got stuff there, including like the deluxe edition cover, sketchbooks, that sort of thing. And then it's got an Easter egg breakdown because there's a lot of great Easter eggs to Batman and other things. One of my favorite features is that Sean Murphy's a pretty big car guy. So one of the first things he was doing when he was doing this comic was he was like, well, I need to design a new Batmobile. And so you get the blueprint designs for what is tagged the Murphy Batmobile, which I think is really, really cool. I like that it's a big fold-out poster that comes with it. And he talks about how like it's inspired by the '89 Batmobile, but there's also like direct, car, muscle car influences, which I think is really, really cool. And that's kind of the things that I like about Sean Murphy as an artist, is that he does kind of take this approach of like the way he draws vehicles and the way he draws people. I think he's got such dynamic art to him, which I think is just making this series kind of work. And that is one of the reasons I did want to get this in Absolute Edition, is the art is incredible. I think it is one of the strongest parts of the story, because Sean Murphy is typically an artist. And what I like about this Absolute Edition, which is the nice surprise, there's an introduction where he talks about like his inspirations and what he did, and then he also talks about criticisms. He talks about how it was like, it was really well received, it sold very well. And he said, but it wasn't all positive. The book took off so fast that it soon garnered some detractors. And to be fair, the well-actually crowd, as I like to call them, weren't always wrong in their criticism. The naysayers claim White Knight was just a continuation of Batman the Animated Series, which I always admitted. And while some say it was just a glorified fan fiction, which I could easily describe in most comics, I pride myself on being open to criticism, especially when it comes to writing. I never really set out to be a writer, so I don't have a delicate ego, and like I would if someone criticized my artwork. So as the years went on, I tried to take criticism with heart and make White Knight its own separate thing. Curse of the White Knight is more inspired by Dracula, swashbuckling pirates, and the founding of New York City than it was by the cartoon. And while Beyond the White Knight certainly references Batman Beyond, there's not as much about Terry as one would expect. And so I thought that was kind of interesting, the way that, people were like, well, this kind of takes from this kind of takes from this, this kind of takes from this. And so going forward into the future stories, he was like, well, what if I don't take as much from this and do this instead? The other thing I find wild about the book, and so what I like about this, so I love this comic, right? And I've read it in color, obviously. They've never put it out in black and white before. And I decided to read it in black and white before doing this video, so that way I could have a point of reference as to how does it read in black and white compared to color. Because sometimes you read a comic, especially one that's art focused like this, since, again, traditionally Sean Murphy's an artist who also wrote the comic. The thing is that what is an art focused book in black and white? How does it play differently? Is this, because he didn't do the coloring on the original comic, But I do feel like he drew most of this with an intention of the colorist coming in and doing the coloring. Because while I was reading it, I did find it quite enjoyable still to read it and see it in the pure pencils and black ink style, which I thought was good. But there was some of these things later on, especially when you're talking about like the visual difference between Jack Napier and the Joker. It's not as distinctive in the pencils and the inking as it is in the colors, because there's no skin color shifting. But then at the same time, it sort of felt like, oh, well, maybe that's also kind of intentional, that like Jack and the Joker are not that different at the end of the day, that they really are the same person and not just two separate personalities. So I thought that was kind of interesting to kind of see play out. Now, the cool part is that the black and white edition does come with a different bonus section in the back. And I got to be a little bit careful because there is a page that is uncensored here where it's more censored in the comic itself. This is a mature label comic. So here's some of the original page art galleries. And I thought this was interesting because it says the following section contains a selection of Sean Murphy's original scan pages from Batman White Knight 1 to 8. After illustrating the pages traditionally, Murphy scans his artboards and adjusts the black and gray levels in Photoshop before the digital files are sent to the colorist. The unedited pages are presented here, raw brush strokes and all. And so I thought this was really cool because there is a distinctive difference in like the hand-drawn style versus kind of his adjusted black level style, so that way it makes it easier for the colorist to step in. And so I think that that was really, really cool to see, kind of see the process in this. And then we get to what I think is probably my favorite feature in this, and I gotta be, again, super careful because of the uncensored page. All right, so this section is called 5 Sequences I Like. And it's Murphy talking about what are the pages and panels that he liked and how they turned out. What were his favorites? And I thought really great. And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. He highlighted some of the stuff he liked. And then this one was my favorite part. 5 panels I don't like. And this is him looking back and reflecting on his work and going, that could have been better. This could have been better. He didn't like the way this cover turned out, for example, because he thought that the 50-50 composition wasn't as strong. He felt that Jack didn't look too much different than Bruce Wayne, and that, like, you know, editorial notes kind of came in to kind of tighten up this first cover, and he kind of feels like he didn't do his best on that. And then, you know, there's other moments like a continuity gaffe here. He talked about, you know, the cars here, but he didn't draw the mechanics the exact way he wanted. And then he talked about this famous page of Joker beating up Batman, which is supposed to be kind of like the last straw. This is kind of like starting the story for Batman in this book, where it's like he's gone too far. Who's going to pull him back? Who can actually stop him? He's going too far. This page, he said the composition was all off. And you had like a foreshortening problem of like, Renee Montoya looks super short compared to Dick Grayson. They're not as close in height as they should be, and stuff like that. Fascinating. I love when an artist of any kind can look back at their prior work and go, all right, well, I like this. This really worked. I'm proud of this overall, but here's some things I would have changed. Here's some things I would go back and redo. And then it's also, as the series continues to the sequels, you can see the evolution. You can see that he kind of took some criticism that came from fans, but also from himself, and improved as an artist and a writer going forward. And I'm still waiting for him to do, he's supposed to be doing one more of these, because there's been the 3 main books, which is White Knight, Curse of the White Knight, Beyond the White Knight. There's been spin-offs for Harley Quinn, Mr. Freeze, and Red Hood. And so I'm hoping that we're going to get the next chapter in the saga, because I've been really enjoying this. But the thing I think that works about it for me is it's not perfect out the gate, right? I think this is one of those comics I think is really solid, but it is not like a 10 out of 10 out the gate. And I think that going forward, I think Curse of the White Knight might be a 10 out of 10. But I think it's very fascinating. And I think having this edition where you have comments from the artist saying, you know, here's things I didn't like, and not afraid to say that, like, here's some iconic moments from this book that I don't think quite worked the way they should have. That is really, really cool insight to have. And it made me appreciate this even more than I did before. I really appreciated the way that this story told a different version of these characters. And then, because it was allowed to continue, really develop a fascinating dynamic between Batman, Joker, Harley, and everybody in Gotham. And I think that, you know, if it hadn't been continued, it wouldn't have been as strong. I think the later volumes make this series better, but I also think that that's kind of like a good thing too. I think it's nice to have the evolution, and I like that the Absolute Edition is not just like, look how amazing and perfect it is, but they let Sean Murphy write about whatever he wanted to, and what he wanted to write about was the things that didn't work as well. And I think that's really, really awesome. And I wish that more behind-the-scenes things for anything could have that level of transparency and honesty, because I think it strengthens the work. I think it strengthens my appreciation of the work, knowing that, you know, anything that I found that may not have been quite perfect, it's okay. Even the artist is like, yeah, there's things that would have changed, and that's something that I think is really great. That humility and that kind of humanity behind it, I think, made me appreciate this comic even more than I had before. Even though, again, I loved it, and I was like, yeah, let me buy the Absolute Edition. But then actually having the Absolute Edition and reading the bonus material made me like it even more than I already did. So hopefully this sold well. It's a Batman title. I'm sure it did, but I would love to see DC continue this and do Curse and Beyond and the spin-offs in Absolute Edition. I would totally pick up Absolute Editions for this entire universe. I think it'd be a really, really cool collection to have. And so hopefully DC does it, because I think that'd be a really awesome to have this gorgeous artwork in this gorgeous format. So I am getting on this Absolute Edition train. So if you want to see some more from me, like I said, I got 3 more planned this year. I'm not going to go back and buy any prior Absolute Editions this year, because I got enough coming in for new releases. But if you want to see me cover those other 3, let me know in the comments. Hit the like button, hit subscribe to the notification bell. Make sure this video does well. I'll definitely continue doing these. This is an experiment, because Crisis was a big one. This was just me talking about a book I love. If you want to see that again, there's 3 more options for you coming up. So let me know. All right, on that note, you can join our Discord server in the link below if you'd like to continue the conversation. You can also join as a channel member and get perks like early access to videos. Let's give some special shout-outs to our channel members. Special shout-out to all of our channel members, including Captain Tears, Spin-54, Forever1000, Masterbin95, Veloquince, Mr. Smelly Potato, Alt Mode Archive, Alice James, Tarn Thomas, Actual Lee, Common Jojo, MP, Joseph Tuchek, Star Who, Jason Day, Grizzly3, Legacy Spock, Ben, and LFIV. Thank you all for your support of this channel, viewers and channel members alike. If you so wish, I'm on social media on Blue Sky and Letterboxd at Soundout12. You can find Wonderful Graphic Designer on social media and Discord at DarkClaw643. You can find Hero Club at hero-club.com for comic reviews and more. And until next time, this is Soundout saying, can you guess what my next Absolute Edition is?